Welcome to the Happiness Happens podcast. I'm Simona Nicole, host of the show, mindset coach, and motivational speaker. I've made it my mission to help you get unstuck, shift your mindset, and understand your worth to help you live your most purposeful life. Each week, I will bring you an idea, guest, or a positive thought that will leave you inspired and empowered to win your life. We decide the stories we tell ourselves and where we invest our energy. I'm so grateful you popped in. Now let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode on the Happiness Happens podcast. I'm really excited about today's guest. You're going to learn so much from her. I'll introduce her quickly. Her name is Viola Hug, which is an amazing last name, by the way. And she is an intuitive coach, mentor, author, podcaster, and the creator of the Abundant Babes brand. She coaches women on business, wealth, spirituality, and mindset, and how those things utilized together allow you to have it all in life. Viola and her husband traveled the world for almost 2 years as digital nomads, meaning that while they were traveling the world, she built and grew her multiple six-figure business online. She runs live online programs, high-level masterminds, and for those who want it all, she also takes on one-on-one clients. She hosts a successful podcast called Abundant Babes and is the author of the Amazon bestseller, You Are an Abundant Babe. Viola is fun, unique, and passionate, making her a captivating speaker, and her energy and words are often the catalyst for her followers and clients to take complete ownership of their life, believe in themselves, and create a reality that blows the mind of even their wildest dreams. So I'm really excited, Viola. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. I'm really excited. I'm reading this bio and I'm like, yes, you are fun. Yes, you are unique and you're passionate. I mean, from all the things that I've seen from you so far. But I would love so much if you could tell our listeners a little bit about the journey that's brought you to where you are.
Oh my gosh. Where do I begin, right? It's always like the question with stories.
I know.
But seriously, like I have to say that like when I hear my own bio, I'm like, oh shit, I'm really cool. Like,
I did that.
I'm like, wow, this is actually my life now. And there's like this sense of just like, oh my gosh, pinch me, but also, oh my God, of course, like, of course, this is my life. This is always what I've envisioned for it. How could it not be my life now? Right. But I think there was just so many testing things on the journey. And sometimes when we have like a vision that is so far from what we currently have in our reality, it's hard sometimes to imagine that it would ever happen. And then even when it happens, it's sometimes hard to remember that this is actually your life now, And
crazy.
So for me, I've always been a visionary. I've always had kind of like a sense that there was more available than meets the eye in life, like that kind of vibe. And that journey led me on to deciding I wanted to be an entrepreneur back in 2012 and kind of like diving into my first entrepreneurial journeys and experimenting with things. But those are what I call like my character building years. I joke around now and I say it was like my struggling entrepreneurship archetype years. And yes. I mean, on a kind of like an entrepreneurial level, yeah, that's what it was. But it was also the time that I found myself and I really I think I was able through the hardship, which there was many things that were hard. It was the personal growth. It was the standard that you have to hold yourself to when you really do want a different life for yourself. Yeah. And then it was also the fact that, not that I ever saw things as a failure. Like I'm a little bit of an eternal optimist in the sense of like, I always believed it would work out. But at the time it was just like, oh, my bank accounts keep going deeper into negative. But it'll work out, This
is great.
Yeah. This is great. Yeah, that meme with like the house on fire.
Like, this is fine.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, like there was a time when I was like almost like neglecting my own emotions and, not even letting myself accept how, sometimes I really just didn't need to have a cry and be like, okay, this is effing hard, but it doesn't mean I'm giving up, But that's also another thing that I learned is to honor my emotions better during that time. And I think one of the most profound things that I learned is that I'd always had this expectation of like this life that I wanted. And that when I achieved something specific in my life, I would finally have that feeling I was chasing, which I would finally be respected by my peers. I would finally be like, ha ha, to all the bullies at high school. Like I would finally feel a sense of like, I've made it, and now I can relax, and now I don't need to worry about money, and now I can just enjoy my relationship. But in fact, as we all hear so often, it was the other way around. Like I got a taste, like in my first year of entrepreneurship, I started making money and I started like getting a taste for what it was like. And I was like, oh my God, this is so awesome. But everything was just like, cool. I got the cool, fancy businesswoman suit and it still doesn't feel good enough. So now I need to get a better brand business suit, you know, like I need a higher quality one. And then it was like, I made the money, but are you going to sustain that money? Are you going to make more money? Did you plateau now? Like, what's the deal?
Yeah.
And then, so I got a taste and I started realizing this doesn't feel that fun. Like this is like, it was still exciting. You know, don't get me wrong. I was still like loving the fact that I was doing it, but it was like this, it's still not enough. It's still not enough. When's it going to feel like it's enough? Right. And then it took me essentially losing everything. I mean, like literally going into over 6 figures of debt and just like not ever understanding how I was going to get myself out of that situation, to start to realize that what if I actually decided that I could just feel proud of myself regardless of what the external experience was. Abundance, right? Like when I say I built the Abundant Babes brand, the reason that came about is because I had to learn that abundance is something we first cultivate a feeling of inside. Like the feeling that you're always going to be taken care of and that there's more than enough isn't because of how much you have in your bank account. I can guarantee it. There's people that have so much money in their bank accounts and they still spend all their time in fear that they'll lose it.
So
right?
True.
Yeah. And so I had to cultivate that feeling first. And so it's like I did all that internal work. And then I got to this point where it was kind of like my effort moment where I was like, I'm done doing what I think I should do. I'm done listening to other people. I'm done. Through like a couple of divine guidance things, I was like, I'm starting a coaching business. My commitment is I'm going to follow my intuition and do what feels good for me the entire time, even when it's scary. And I'm going to only do what I want. And with that, I built a multiple 6-figure business in 2 years. So, I mean,
That's
worked out kind of well.
I mean, I think it's going well for you so far. That's amazing. And you know what I love so much that you just said there is that, you know, okay, you see a lot, and I know that there's tons of people that this is like their reality, but, you know, building that multiple 6-figure business in like 40 days. You know what I mean? Like you don't even see people that are like, yeah, I went from $0 to $1 million in 6 weeks. And you're like, but what were all the years before that you struggled and you failed and you learned something and you got back up and you picked your pieces up and you tried again? You know what I mean? That's the part that I want to know. You know what I mean? Like
I know. And it's so wild because I know for sure that part had to be part of my journey because I needed to learn that stuff, because if I was having the level of success, like let's say financially, that I am now, but I was still feeling empty inside, like, is that success? Like, no, it's not. It's shit. Like, it feels not very good. It's like, nobody wants that. We think we want it. We think we want the numbers in the bank account to be like, oh, I had a 20K month. I'm so cool. Like, whatever. But no, that's legit not what you want. Like, you want to feel good about yourself. You want to feel like you're making an impact. You want to have fun. You want to be like honoring your soul and your desires, not neglecting them. And so I definitely had to go through those years. But I think also what's so amazing is that we also have opportunity to like learn things through osmosis. We also have the opportunity to learn things and be guided by things. Like, as much as I believe we need to go through our own journey, I also don't believe everyone needs to struggle for 5 years before they have a breakthrough.
Oh my God, I totally agree.
Yeah.
It's so true, especially because it's like, that's the whole point. You know what I mean? Some people's journeys are, you know, you're going to struggle through it all. You're going to figure out how to build it all yourself, and you're going to learn all of those things. And then those are going to be the things that you help other people do, right? And then some people are lucky enough to, you know, get that guidance right away and know that it's available to them to start.
But also, like, I like also look at it from like a different perspective, is like, the reason it took me so long is because for so long I was listening to other people that I shouldn't have necessarily been listening to. I was pushing a lot of my intuition aside. I was like basically like creating habits that, like when I first started my coaching business and I decided to hire a coach, literally I feel like most of the work that we did was unlearning all of the things I'd learned through like that I kind of self-created. Like, for example, like this is like, it wasn't an exact example of mine because I wasn't doing this kind of business at the time, but I see this happen to my clients all the time. It's like they launch a program and they're so excited about it and they're like, this is the best thing ever, and they're like, whatever, and then nobody signs up, and then they start working with me and they're like, oh yeah, I wanted to launch this thing, and you know, I really love the concept of it, but nobody signed up, so I don't know, like, is the program wrong, is the price wrong, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, maybe I should be doing something else. Or they're in a new launch and they're like, yeah, but last time nobody signed up, so now I'm freaking out that nobody's going to sign up this time. It's like we created a story off of one thing that happened. And when we're not careful and we're not like really hyper aware of what's going on in our mind, and sometimes we can do that for ourselves, sometimes it's great to have a coach to help us with that, but it's like when we're not hyper aware of that, then we create stories and patterns around things that don't need to be stories and patterns. That doesn't need to be a story and pattern. That's just, wow, okay, you had one launch where nobody signed up. There's unlimited possibilities for next time.
So
you
true.
know?
Yeah.
So I think a big reason why it took me so long as well is because, which it meant, you know, it all happens for a reason, but it's like a big reason why I see a difference between how long it took me to have my breakthrough versus where I see other people have breakthroughs so much quicker, is because I resisted being like all in on like myself, all in on my intuition, all in on like finding the right support from the beginning, because I kind of also had a little bit of an ego thing. Like, I'm going to do it all myself and I'm going to be like, see, it was all 100% me and nobody else helped me get here. If I'm being honest.
Love it. I love it. What did that, you know, moment of going all in look like for you? Like, was it a specific day? Was it a specific thing? Or was it just like over time?
I mean, I think all of our decisions happen over time, but then, you know, where they really shift us is in the moment that we decide to make the decision. So it was definitely like an overtime thing for me, but it was that moment that I decided to launch my coaching business. Cause like, just to give like a little bit more context, I had been, like I started off, my first entrepreneurial thing was in network marketing, which was super great because it introduced me to like so many great things around personal development and, you know, just things that I really needed at that time.
Yeah.
And during that time though, because I'm such a creative person, I had a million other ideas for businesses. Like I remember, and this story is like one of those things where I'm like, I wonder what would have, you know, I wonder
what would have happened.
I remember in 2012, right? I heard of podcasts for the first time and I was just like, I think I'm going to start this podcast. And I remember I like said to my like mentors within the company, and I was like, I think I'm going to start a podcast. And they're like, what's that? And I'm like, well, it's this audio platform where you just share stuff and da-da-da. And then they're like, yeah, that sounds great, but why don't you first like put all of your attention first to being successful here. And then when this is working, then you can like branch out and try other things. And I was just like, yeah, that makes sense. I'll do that. Right? Makes sense. Whatever. Anyway, like 5 years later, I find Lewis Howes, who in 2012 came across the podcasting platform. Yeah, I know. And literally, and I'm just sitting there going, damn it. Like, you know, and not saying that would have been my dream. But the thing is that it was like, I was so like, I didn't trust my own intuition. Like I really didn't. And intuition is a huge part of my journey and my story. Like my kind of like spiritual connection in terms of like trusting what our soul is showing us, like trusting divine guidance, trusting that life's happening for us is such a huge part of, I feel like, where I both find ease and like, you know, I kind of take a little bit of pressure off myself in my journey, but also where I found the most profound shifts. And when I talk about intuition, I really feel like it's like we have like our human mind, which is the conditioned mind. It's like everything about life and what we know is based on our humanness, like what our parents taught us, what society standards are, et cetera, et cetera. Then we have our soul, which is kind of like this whole limitless entity that like knows our potential. It knows everything we're capable of. It comes from like abundance, love, like all the things. And so the soul and the human have very different perspectives of what like a scary thing to do is. The soul's just, what? you're meant for this. Like, why would you be scared of this? Right. And the humans, but like, yeah, but I know someone who did this and this and that and that.
You know? These are all the reasons why you shouldn't do it. And
yeah,
we don't do this kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like the soul is always hinting at us what we could be doing, like where we could find deeper fulfillment, where we could experience a new version of ourselves. And that is very much through a feeling. It's like oh my gosh, can you imagine? Like this heartstring, that pull on your heart where it's just like, that would be the coolest thing ever. And we have that moment of absolute bliss. And then 5 seconds later, it's like, yeah, but, then the mind kicks in.
Yes, exactly.
So it's like we have that, and that's like what I call the intuition, is like where we're kind of like being given little clues through how we feel. It's just most of us are just like, well, we get logical about it, we think about it, we analyze it. But if we really were to listen to our soul, it's kind of like a shortcut to everything we ever wanted.
That's so true.
Yeah. And so it's like when I really decided, like, so I was kind of like finding my own intuition, my spirituality a little bit in 2017. And around October, I was like, okay, that's it. I need a sign. Like, I was still trying to make the business I was doing at the time really work. And I was like, I want something to help me. And I want a really clear sign that it's going to be the thing. I go on Facebook, someone that I kind of knew, but not really knew, was like launching a program. And it was essentially around like helping you like channel your purpose into your business so that it's more aligned. And I was like, this sounds cool. It started on my birthday. And I was like, this is a sign. I do this program, right? I get my mom to buy it for me because I was so broke at the time. I'm like, Mom,
thanks, Mom.
It'd be a really great birthday present. And she's like, Viola, again, like another thing that you're going to complete and do. And, it's going to be the thing. And I'm like, yes, honestly, this time it is, Mom. And I mean, I laugh about it now because my mom's like my biggest supporter and cheerleader, and she has been all those years, but now it's like nice for her to see that it's actually all paid off,
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so then I know this is like a very long-winded way to answer your question, but it's just
no, I love it. This is perfect. I love it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I'm good.
So where was I? Okay, so then I do this course, and I think I'm doing it because it's going to help me with what I was currently doing. Within it, though, I kind of get this nudge, and also the leader of the program, she was just like, I feel like there's like this whole other area that you're like neglecting, that you kind of already know you should be doing, but you're not showing up there. And I'm like, yeah, possibly, because for probably like 3 years I'd heard of this idea of being a coach, but I was like, whatever, too hard basket. It'll take away from what I'm currently doing, whatever. But then the intuition was so strong that I was like, I'm just going to do it, whatever. And that was really where I had the breakthrough. Like, I didn't have the breakthrough in terms of my external experience yet, because I was like, the commitment I made, follow my intuition, even when it's scary, and do it exactly my way. I was like, there's no room for compromise. I'm not doing a single thing I don't want to do. Like, for example, like, this is just like a little thing, but I remember like in network marketing, you're taught to like always follow up, right? Like, they're always like, follow up. When like someone's interested, keep following up.
Yep.
I don't like doing that, because I like the feeling of, like, when I make a decision, I like the feeling of being fully like in ownership of my decision. Like, this is my decision and I'm so excited about it. And that's like a really empowering feeling. And I feel like sometimes when there's like the follow-up, it's kind of just like, hey, have you made a decision yet? And then there's like pressure, right? So that's like one thing I didn't like. So I decided, I was like, in my coaching business, I'm never going to follow up with people. Like, they're either going to want it or they're not. Like, that's it. And that's what I do, right? That's what I do. And turns out that people are so much more excited to pay you when it's their decision, 100%.
What'd you say? Just kidding.
What a surprise. But like, that's just like one small example of the things, I was like, anything that I actually really, really don't resonate with, I'm not going to do. That doesn't mean I'm not going to do hard things or challenging things, because I still believe in the growth comes through challenge, like a lot of the times, or the stepping outside the comfort zone type vibe. But it's like, for sure, I'm going to do what I love. And then I made that commitment, and I got a couple of clients over the first few months, and it was all exciting. And before I really, really started making money, I mean, to be honest, when I made my first $1,000 in a month, I was like, I've made it. Like, I was like,
I'm thriving.
Yeah, because of where I come from.
Yeah.
That was big money for me at that point, you know? And so I was so proud of myself. And I think that was also a big factor, is just being able to relish and celebrate myself as well.
But also so key that you just said there is like, you appreciated that money. Do you know what I mean? Like, you loved that money, you know what I mean? And that's the best thing, because I always say, and think to myself, like, if you don't appreciate the $100, you're never going to appreciate the $1 million. You have to appreciate all of it. So that's so key, I think.
Oh yeah. I think celebration, appreciation, gratitude is like, there's some of the biggest pillars of success that we easily overlook, you know? And I have this like philosophy that if people really would go all in on the small things, like really commit to like, okay, gratitude, but not just writing my 10 things I'm grateful for in the morning because somebody told me I should, but like really committing to what does it actually feel like to truly feel grateful for something? You know, like, how can I really learn the feeling of gratitude in my body, where I literally feel it vibrating through my body, and it actually does shift my entire experience that I'm having in that moment. Like, if I went all in on like really, really, really understanding gratitude, dude, your life would change so fast. Like, I kid you not, like, it's the small things. It's not that you're going to like learn a new strategy to 10K. It's not that you're going to find like the perfect soulmate with this manifestation technique. Like, all those things are great, but that's not where I think specifically fulfillment and success comes from. Like, the success that feels good in every area. Like, that's it comes from the small things, like really having that understanding. And it's like, even with like people who talk to me about my money store, like, how did it change? Like, oh my God, like, did you suddenly like launch? So it's because you launched your business and you had a new offer that suddenly now people wanted to buy from you. No, like, that's not it. It's because I was so obsessed with seeing abundance in my life that I got excited when I found a penny on the floor. I got excited when I saw that the bread that I was going to buy at the grocery store was on special for 50 cents less than it normally is. I was like, abundant, 50 cents.
Look at me getting all the money.
I know. I was like, thank you, universe. And I felt it in my entire body. It wasn't just like, tick, thanks, universe. It was like in my entire body. I was like, see, this is proof that there's always good things happening to me. This is proof there's always abundance on its way. And that belief shifted who I was in the world. And that's what then gave me different results.
Ooh, I love that so much. That's so important too, especially when you're manifesting things, like being able to vibrate like that energy out. And I have like a couple questions for you that sort of spin off of that. The first one is, what are some ways that you tap into your intuition now?
Mm-hmm. So the first thing is, there's kind of like, there's the practice, and then there's the like on-demand version, right? So the on-demand version is really just like, I really pay attention to what gives me that feeling, that ooh,
yay
feeling. And I also really pay attention to where I've lost that feeling, because sometimes things are aligned for a time, and we want to commit to them because of honor or because of whatever. And I mean, I think this is like a fine line to talk about, because sometimes people use alignment as an excuse to opt out of things that just feel uncomfortable in a moment. So we also want to be mindful of that. But the intuition of like, really like, oh my gosh, this is pulling me forward. Usually there's like not a lot of logic to it. Like when I like was full in, decided that I was going to invest in my coach, I had like my consultation call with her, which was, I think, the most I'd ever spent for an hour call as well. And I was like, this is insane. And she told me her pricing, and I was like, okay, cool. So it's more than I'd ever made in a month at this point. We had just like started traveling, my husband and I. So we were within our first like month and a half of traveling full time with no real other backup option, no credit, no savings. My coaching income was the only income. And I said, yes, let me get back to you in 3 weeks. And I launched a program. I made just enough money to pay her and to pay for like our Airbnb that month.
Oh my
God. That, there's no logic to that. Like, no. That is crazy talk.
It is.
But there was every fiber of my being that was like, this makes no sense, but it's the right decision. And I couldn't explain it. It wasn't like, oh, I should have a coach. No, I didn't need a freaking coach. I was doing like pretty good. Like we were still affording our travel at this point, you know, like it was fine. But I was like, I just know it's the right decision. No logic. Right. But it totally yeah. So like, that's like listening to the intuition on demand kind of thing. It's like when things come up, it's like, how willing are you to listen to that voice? And it doesn't need to be like crazy, scary things like that all the time. Sometimes it's like to share something with someone, to tell someone something. Sometimes it's to make a shift, to wear something. Like, you know, it can be small things or it can be big things, but it's just like this feeling where it's just like, you know what, today I'm going to wear these earrings. Like, I don't know why. Like, I'm just going to wear these earrings today. They just feel like the right fit. Like learning to listen to that. And then in terms of like my practice, I would say that there's like multiple things that we can do, but even just like connecting through things like meditation, journaling, anything that gives us space to be more aware of who we are and what we're actually feeling and what's actually going on within us, I think is really powerful. Because I think the biggest reason why we don't trust our intuition is because, well, obviously there's the fear aspect, but a big reason is because we've never given ourselves permission to fully trust it, because we don't really know what's going on within ourselves. It's like, yeah, but is that just because everybody else has it, so that's why I want it? Or is it because it's what I really, really want? Right. And getting space, like giving yourself space to know yourself is really important, I think. Yeah.
That's so key. Yeah, no, that's such a good point. And then, you know, I think that it's really just interesting hearing you talk about all of these things, because it really puts it into sort of practice, and that, you know, these are things that are doable, and these are things that can change your life in a significant way, but sometimes they're not always things that we give ourselves enough credit for doing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Just listening to yourself and like, what do you want? Not what somebody else has told you that you wanted. You know what I mean? But what do you want? And back to like your example of podcasting before, I mean, you know, that could have played out in such a totally different way. You're right. When you're like, could have been so different, but you know, I just think that I just think that it's crazy. And sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, one thing people ask as well, they're like, oh, how do I know it's intuition though? Like, how do I know it's aligned for me? Right? Because people are like, yeah, but am I feeling fear because it's wrong for me? Or am I feeling fear because it's right for me and it's just outside of my comfort zone? And my honest opinion is you only will feel fear around things that are meant for you. And I'm talking like not being silly here, not life-threatening fear, like
no, yeah,
fear around desires. And here's why I say that, because if it was something that you could already have in your life that was easily accessible for you and you wanted it and you desired it, there would be no fear because it was already right there, right? And I know it's like a super simple example, but it's like, if you really feel like making spaghetti for dinner, you're not going to be like, oh, but should I? Like, is it the right decision? But what if I, you know, use up all the spaghetti in my house and then I never have spaghetti again? And then, oh, it's like, oh my gosh, no, that's too scary. Like, I don't know if I should do it. I don't know if I should commit. You know, you'd just be like, okay, I feel like spaghetti, delicious, I'm making spaghetti. No fear, because it's something easily accessible in your world already, right? Like, and depending on like your relationship with things in your life, like that, the same example could be about doing a social media post. It could be about whatever, right? Like if it's already within the realm of what you can currently receive, you're not gonna have fear. If it's not meant for you, you're also not gonna feel fear, because why would you feel fear about something that you're not meant to do, right? Like, and again, super silly example, but if someone was just like, hey, like, do you want to sleep in a dumpster tonight? You'd be like, no,
not at all.
I'm fine. Like, I'd rather just sleep in my bed. Thank you. It's like, you wouldn't be like, oh my God, should I? No, you'd be like, no, dude, I'm not going to sleep in a dumpster. It's fine.
Oh my God, this is like your examples are my actual favorite. And I think what makes you so wonderful is that you really are so authentic to yourself. And like, you know, I think that's so important. You know what I mean? It's like, you're like a breath of fresh air. I don't know if anyone's ever told you that before, but you are. And talking to you really is too. And no, it's awesome. And I'm curious in terms of like, following your intuition, and then, you know, working and doing specific things. Let's say you're a coach, you're launching a program, you have a business, you sell something, whatever. When you're manifesting something, what are some tips that you give people to manifest in like a way that works?
Okay. Yeah. So manifestation is something that like I taught a lot when I first started, and it's like evolved as I've like shifted the work that I do. But I think the thing with manifestation is like, I believe we're always manifesting, right? Like everything in our life is a manifestation, because everything in our life is being matched with what we believe we can have. Right. So the like most basic example of that is the, like, you see families that are like, the dad had a job and then he's like to the son, go to university and get a degree and get a job. And then they do that. And it's like, it's not out of the realm to think that that would be possible for them. It's just like, of course, like they're going to do that. They're going to go get a job and whatever. And then there's families where like people are like high school dropouts and they like have a trouble keeping a job. And you see this pattern repeating. Right. And then you see families where they're all entrepreneurs and they're all wealthy and they're all doing these things, and the pattern's repeating. And it's because
I want to quickly pause this interview and tell you about the Handel Group coaches that I've had the honor and privilege of bringing onto the Happiness Happens podcast. With every conversation and interview, I've learned something so impactful and so life-changing. Inner You Life is the online coaching course from Handel Group that gives you the tools to get yourself unstuck, wildly happy, and thriving where it matters most to you. Your relationship to yourself, career, love, body, money, time, and more. From wherever, whenever. Recommended by Hugh Jackman, Dr. Mark Hyman, Forrest Whitaker, Elena Brower, and hundreds more. Taught in MIT, Stanford School of Business, and 50 plus institutes of learning across the world. Visit inneryou.coach and use the code HappinessHappens at checkout for $75 off. Now, back to the episode.
Because they're conditioned to believe that that's the most like likely thing to quote unquote manifest in their life, right? To happen in their life. So it's like everything in our life really is a manifestation. And it's like, when I first learned this, it was like a little bit triggering to me in a sense, because I'm like, yeah, but what about the bad things? But then also at the same time, it's like, I don't necessarily think that everything in our life is our fault, because sometimes we're not aware of it. You know what I mean? It's not that it's our fault, but the moment that we become aware of it, we have a choice, right? And the moment we have a choice, we can choose to stay in it or we can choose to change it. And that's just the truth. Like, no matter if that triggers you or not, depending on your situation. I mean, I've been in so many situations in my life where that truth was the most painful thing to hear, but it was also the truth. So,
no, it's so true. It's so true.
And so it's like everything in our life is a manifestation, which means that if we start to shift the way we think the things that we believe to be true for ourselves, we can also shift the things that happen for us, right? Like if I would have stayed in the belief that I was going to stay broke because I was so broke, and my whole family had never, like, nobody in my family was ever wealthy, you know, like why would I be the chosen one? You know, like if I had that belief, I would have, rather than when I was in all that debt, that thinking one day I'm going to be on a TEDx stage talking about this, I would have been thinking typical, like, you know, this is just the pattern.
This is what would happen to me. Yeah.
Of course this would happen to me.
Yeah.
But it was like I changed everything about my beliefs. And so, I mean, there's like basic manifestation tips where it's just like know what you want and, you know, visualize it and, you know, show up in that. But like where I really feel the biggest difference comes is in this like real ownership of like, how are you showing up to that level that you desire? So let's say you want to make, I don't know, $5,000 a month in your business, and you currently make $3,000 a month in your business, right? As just a really simple example, then cool. And you want to manifest that. It's like, I'm manifesting $5,000. Where is it? You know, and then it's like, the habit is to respond how we currently respond to it. So it's like we get the same amount of people join the program that we're launching. So we're like, oh, well, if the same amount of people join, how am I going to grow? It's not possible for me to make $5,000. Or we get someone inquire about coaching or whatever our business is, and then they don't sign up, and we say, see, how am I going to make $5,000 if this person isn't joining and they said they were going to?
Yeah.
We get into our head about it, and we're kind of like, it's almost like we're looking for reasons why it's not going to work versus the other way around. But the decision of really like embodying a different level is showing up in a different way. So it's like, if $5,000 was in the bag, how would you feel about the client that said no? There's another one coming, you know, they're not the aligned client, right? If it was in the bag anyway, if it was going to happen anyway, you wouldn't be worried about the little details. That's like trust in something happening and needing proof that it's going to happen are like, they cancel each other out. Like you can't have trust and belief, or like trust and,
but like,
I
show
just
me
want to
how.
double check. Yeah. But just show me how, just give me proof that it's going to happen, you know? They can't coexist. And so it's really just like a discipline around our thoughts. And it doesn't mean that we have to be perfect with it, but it means that if we do notice our thoughts slipping when it comes to whatever it is that we're wanting to manifest, that we bring ourselves back on track as soon as possible. And it doesn't mean that we've messed everything up just because we thought the wrong thing one time, like whatever, be easy on yourself. But it does mean,
oh my God.
yeah, but it does mean that this moment you realize that the thought isn't in alignment, you bring yourself back. And just for 2 more seconds, the like perfect example of that is when I hired my coach, right? Like, so I decided to go on a monthly payment plan because that was the most realistic offer for me at the time. I was like, I can make, you know, the monthly payment with this, you know, that feels more accessible than the full payment anyway. So anyway, I went on a monthly payment plan for 9 months was when I first signed up with her. And I made this decision that I was going to start working with her. And it was a full body decision. It was not, I'll see if I can make the money, and then if I can, I'll pay her and hire her. It was not, I'll pay her for the first month and see what happens. And if she's a really good coach, then she'll help me make the money. And then I'll have the money to continue working with her. And if she's not good enough to coach me to make more money, then I'm not going to pay her. Then I'll quit. No, that was not it. It was, I was manifesting, like she was making, I don't know, like $100,000 months at this point. So she was like way, way up there. She's like a multimillionaire now. But
is she still coaching now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So she's amazing. But like, so anyway, like I was like, I want to be in the energy of someone making that kind of money, right? I want this in my life, and I want to show up as someone who gets coaching from someone high level. I want to be someone who invests at high level, and I want to be someone who can offer high level to other people. And so when I made that decision, it was a full body, this is who I am now. Like it was a declaration. So that meant when it came to like, deciding how I was like going to continue to make money in my business the following month, it wasn't just like, oh, show me how, you're so great, like you should be able to teach me. It was like, here's my ideas, here's my vision, how can you support me, how can I do it better, like what's the next level for me, what's your you know, like how can I calibrate to your way of looking at my situation, and I'm going to make this work, but now that you're here, please show me where my blind spots are and show me where I can show up better, kind of vibe, right?
Yeah.
Still full responsibility. When I showed up on live videos, it was just like with the energy of like, I am somebody who invests high level, who's going places, who's in this to win this. Like that energy came through in everything. It wasn't just like, oh, well, now I made this really big scary investment, so you better hire me so I'm not scared if I can continue my investments. Like everything about my energy had to change. And yes, I had moments, but good thing I had a coach that could pull me out of those moments. Of course I had moments, but the overall commitment was like a full-on commitment. And so that when it comes to manifestation, it's like, I'm so over this like idea that like, yeah, but I wrote it down and I visualized 5 times and it's still not here. It's just like, yeah, but what did you shift in your energy? Like, how did you show up differently? Yeah.
That's so key. And like, what aligned action did you actually take to getting to the place that you wanted to be?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think like I talk a lot about like human consciousness and soul consciousness, like the 5D and like all these things that are there available to us to guide us. But it's like, when we make a decision, it's like the energy is one part. So how we're thinking about it, how we're feeling about it, but also the action is another really key part of it. And the action is usually, it's not what do I need to do, but when you're in the right feeling, what you need to do becomes obvious, right?
Oh, I love that perspective.
Sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because it would just be your natural next step. Like, you know, you're like, yes, of course, it's like a no-brainer, like you were saying before.
Yeah.
Like, of course that would happen. I love so much that you mentioned 5D because I wanted to talk about it really quick. And I wanted to sort of dive into it. So it's just funny that you brought it up. But what is 5D consciousness? How can you access it? What is it? Like, how do you know if you like, do you know how to do it or not? Like, I'm still pretty new into my spiritual journey, but this is something that I'm so interested in, but I don't really know anything about it.
So I guess like the way that I would describe 5D consciousness is it's the elevated version of humanity from the space of like, well, it's not even necessarily humanity, it's the soul version of humanity, right? Like, so when I was saying before, we have like our human consciousness, which is our like, human conditioning. And even as people, like, I mean, depending on like where in your spiritual journey, like what you believe, but even if you think about like past lives and like all those types of things.
I'm here for it, girl. Go full send. It's okay.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, cool. It's like, you know, like, yeah, we have like, we even have like conditioning that we carry through from past lives. Then we have like our family conditioning, like genetic conditioning. Like there's literal scientific studies that show the way the mom thinks while she's pregnant with a child affects how the DNA is expressed.
Wow.
Like, and like the things that she goes through, right? Which is why there's like, I mean, I think for me, it's really interesting, especially around like things like money, like how the how society's kind of like evolved from like the people who are pregnant with children during the Great Depression and like, you know, all these different things. So there's like all of these kind of conditioning things to our humanness, and 5D consciousness is like more like the angelic realm, you can call it. Like that's where there is no time, there is no space, there is no anything, there's just like access to abundance, and there's everything's about the greater perspective, right? So when you make a decision, it's not just about like, oh, how does this affect me, but how does this affect the collective? Like, how am I impacting the greater, like, well, when we're using 5D consciousness on earth, it's like, how are we affecting humanity as well as ourselves, right? And that's even small things, like you hear of like collective meditations, right? Where people like do meditations all at the same time, and it can literally like shift the impact around the world. And I think that's why we should never also take for granted, like when we choose to have a loving thought, a loving or like a grateful attitude, or do things like that, like we're not only impacting how we feel, we're actually sending that energy out into the world and impacting the world, which is super cool to think about.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So the 5D consciousness is more like that part of ourselves that does have that understanding that we're here for a greater purpose, that doesn't have the limitations that comes along with being a human. And so for me, like a lot of the work that I do, it's like working with both. It's like one, it's like our human consciousness, but also we can transmute our consciousness at a human level, which is like having the perspective of like being like in scarcity mentality to abundance mentality. That's still all happening on a human level. But then being guided by the soul consciousness is suddenly when you then are now not only thinking about how does it affect me, but how is this, like, what is the greater thing here? And what's the next evolution for me versus just like, what's the tangible thing I can receive from this, right? Like, and I think that's where like people, you can make like money up to a certain point. I mean, you can always make money, but like I see a lot of the times where people really start to take those quantum leaps in their income is when they're really guided by like the potentiality of fully seeing what they can like achieve as a human, for more like the evolution of what you can become versus just like, yeah, but I really want this money so I feel taken care of and I can help my family or whatever, you know, like.
So it's on like a bigger scale, like on a more like on a community humanity level, like as opposed to just like, you know, in your own life and what you have.
Yeah, it's like, it's kind of like that, but it's like, it can still be for yourself in a way. Like, for example, like it might be like, what else is possible for me as a human? Like, what else is possible for me to achieve? Like, breaking through the impossible is one thing, but it's like, but then the energy really shifts as well, because like we can't access 5D consciousness when it's all about us. Like 5D consciousness is really, what is the ripple effect? Like, what is this really, how is this impacting the global consciousness a little bit more? And that's where, when I talk about like things like fulfillment and fun and these kind of energies, it's like all of those things, I think that's where a lot of that comes into, is tapping into that. Because when we're like wanting to like make money in our business for ourselves, but we're doing something that we really love, it's still a beautiful co-creation. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think wanting money for yourself, for your human experience, is actually part of the magic, because we're here to be human. We're here to experience the things that we are excited about as a human. But then But then as well, it's like, then we also start to play at a new level when we start to see how we aren't just impacting ourselves and the people we see, we're actually impacting things on a greater scale, and what would be possible for ourselves if we truly allowed ourselves to trust even further into this idea that we're really taken care of, and that there's this whole like divine plan, right?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's really, really good. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I have to dive into more of it, because I feel like there's so much to learn. You know what I mean? Like when you first kind of, you realize all these things, then you realize you have all this side. Then I don't know. I recently did, no, not recently. At the beginning of the year, I did an energy healing like session. I did a couple of them. And that was crazy, because it's really interesting working with a healer. You know what I mean? Like someone who channels messages directly for you. And then you kind of realize that, oh my God, I'm really intuitive too. I have all like, you know what I mean? I can understand, I can get messages too. And that's a little bit like, and you're like, oh, am I ready to dive into that yet? Yeah. And then it's like, yeah, okay, well, I guess there's no escaping it. You know what I mean? But
exactly.
Yeah. And it's like one little thing sort of leading to another that makes you evolve on a more conscious level, and then in turn in your human life.
Exactly. When I talk about like 5D, like for example, embodiment in our life, it's like this understanding that like we're all here to have like our unique version of success. And what's so cool is like we can like, again, like have these like things that we do on a human level, like we start a business and we market it and we have a podcast and like all these really fun things. But then as well, like when we really are in embodiment with quote unquote 5D consciousness, like I really resonate with terms like higher self and like everything which kind of comes from this channel. But it's like when we're really in full embodiment of that, so it's like we're integrating the truth of our soul into who we are and how we show up, then what's so interesting is that that's where like our own unique success blueprint comes from. And that's what I believe I tapped into when I launched my business, when I decided I was not like my coaching business, like when I was not doing anything what other people wanted me to do. I was really following like the bliss of what lit my soul on fire. And I actually, like when I first started my business, I would do, and I still do this now, but it was like the main thing I did at the start. I'd have like at least weekly spirit team meetings where I would like sit down and meditate and ask my spirit team and ask the higher guidance and my higher self and whatever for support and what to do next in my business and how to show up and what the right thing for me to do was, and like all these different things. So it was like I was really like learning to lean on what was actually the intuitive and the divine step for me, and that's why I could trust in those scary steps so much more as well, because I was like, well, my soul's telling me to do it, it's probably right. You know,
my soul knows best. It knows what's to, I guess I'll listen.
Yeah.
I love that. How could someone, you know, start to take the first steps into living that life that they really want to live?
So I mean, even that thing that I just said about like having those, like, I mean, not that you need to, like, depending on your kind of relationship with your own intuition, we all are really intuitive. It's not like you have to be like, oh, I'm having a meeting with my spirit team. But that's like, even if we're meditating, we have like an intention for it, right? Like if we're like, my intention is to get clarity in my life of like, even like where can I bring things further into alignment, like with what I'm really chasing, which it doesn't necessarily need to be a specific thing. It might just be a feeling, like, you know, like you'd love to be doing this, but ultimately what's important is for you to feel like this. And your intention is like, what in my life is currently aligned with that? What currently isn't? And then we meditate. And sometimes in the meditation, we're like, oh my God, epiphany. Sometimes we've just created that space and like we've created an energetic bubble around that thing being like an important thing in our life. So then as we move through our day, as we move through our week, suddenly we're more heightenedly aware of, we notice these things and then we get like, you know, signs and whatever.
Yeah.
So if we're really like wanting to like check our alignment with currently what's going on in our life, I definitely think that that's like a really great tip. But it is really just like coming back to what feels good, what's fun for you, what's the intuitive, and then having a lot of courage, because you're kidding yourself if you think it's gonna be like, oh, I had this intuitive idea and now I'm gonna do this and oh, cool. Like you're gonna have the brain be like, that's crazy, no one's gonna listen, you're gonna go broke, like you're gonna have all of that because that's part of the conditioning, right? But it's like, yeah, just practice with even small things. Like even when I said before, like I would be like really in celebration when like bread was on sale. Like, you know, it's because I was like willing to trust. I'd be like, universe, show me that you're always supporting me. And then it's like, now I'm a detective to find every single way that the universe is currently supporting me, and bread's on sale. So,
so this is obviously divine timing.
so obviously I'm going to be a millionaire and have all the things I want and be happy. And like, yeah. So I know, like, I mean, it's such a simple thing, but that's like what it comes back to what I said before. Like we really do have to go all in on those simple things, because that's where the shift really starts. Like you can't just be like, oh, I magically now understand the embodiment of my higher self and I'm going to change everything overnight. Like you have to be willing to taste it and try it, you know, like, what is it? Okay, let's try this on for size. And I always say, like, be playful with it as well. Like, don't be so serious of like, oh, now I have to try this thing and it has to be the thing that works and it has to be the thing that I have my divine breakthrough through. But it's just like, well, what if you just tried it? You know, like, what if just for this week you just looked for every single way that the universe is supporting you? What if just like you know, played around with, if you didn't have any rules for your life, like what would you actually feel like doing today? Like what would you actually want to do? Or how would you actually want to show up in your business? How would you actually want to show up online? You know, like those kinds of.
I love that. And I know we're getting close to like, you know, the end of this interview, but I just want to make sure, do you still have some time? I have a couple more questions, but if not, then that's sure. Okay. Yeah.
We're good. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I want to talk quickly about your book. I'd love for you to tell our listeners what it's about and what they would learn by reading it.
Okay. So my book is called You Are an Abundant Babe. And it is, hold on, I've got it right next to me.
Oh,
it says that this, well, I don't know if this is going to be on video for this podcast.
It goes on my YouTube as well.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Cool. So, and this whole time then, for those of you watching the video, you've seen me staring into space as I'm like, I'm like so awkward on video. Anyway, skyrocket your self-belief, integrate the secrets to success, and tap into the abundance that is meant for you. And this is a book that I wrote purely out of intuition. My brain was like, you are not cool enough to write a book. My soul was like, you're going to write a book.
This is what we're doing.
This is what we're doing. And I was like, okay. Anyway, so I really have to mention that, because this is like another one of those things where we really like, now I'm so proud of the fact that I'm a book, like that I'm a book. Yes, I'm a book. That I'm an author. And then I wrote a book.
Oh my God, I love you.
Oh my gosh.
Well, you can be a book if you want to. That's great.
You can do what you want, okay?
You do you. I'll be the reader. I'm just kidding.
Great. Yeah, it'll be very interesting. I'll tell you that much. Very weird and interesting. But I'm so proud of it now, and I'm so glad that I did it, because for me, actually, I expected it would be like, oh, cool, I'm an author now. What I got was the deepest sense of growth, like personally, of understanding myself, of really being in like awe of myself in like the best possible way. Like, I don't think you get to know yourself as much when you're like, I'm going to write a story on like what's happened in my life and, you know, how this is going to shift other people, or how other people can take this on board and take a shortcut to what I've learned, you know, like there's just like a sense of power that comes with that. And for me, that was like a huge thing that happened when I wrote the book. But the whole concept of it is really how in my life, like the reason that I've been able to cultivate the courage that I have to do the things and to achieve the things that I have, and all of that was because of the inner work of really like realizing that at like the kind of overall view of the book is that we really are abundant already. Like we are abundance. We have access to the feeling of being so supported and to seeing that flow into our life at any moment. And there is not you need to do this first. There's not a but when it's just like you are abundant, you are worthy. That's just a fact of the universe. Like that's just the truth.
I love that.
So for me, I had to learn that though, right? And I shared a little bit of that journey on this podcast of really having to go into that self-discovery of realizing that it really does come from within. So in the book, I kind of outlined through the chapters the main shifts and perspectives that it took me to really understand that and embody that. And then every chapter as well has an exercise and some like journaling prompts so you can really integrate it, because that's why I say in the subtitle, like integrate the secrets to success, because you can listen to as many podcasts as you want and read as many books as you want and do as many courses as you want. But if you're not really finding a way to apply it into your life, right? And that's why I keep going back to these examples, just try it out. Like just, just really go all in on these little things. Like when you really start to integrate, that's when you really start to see the shifts in your life. And so that's the intention of the book. And it's on Amazon and Book Depository and all those places you find books online.
Awesome. I'll put the link in the show notes so that people can find it and get to it directly.
And I do have to say though, as well, like, it's very much written in my voice. So it's like, it's got some swearing in it and stuff like that. So,
it's very true to you. I like that.
Yeah. I had an Amazon review and they're just like, 1 star. She swore in the first paragraph. And I was like,
maybe not.
Okay, you're not my ideal reader. That's fine.
That's definitely not the book for you. Oh my God, that's so frustrating.
This is not going to be for you.
Oh my gosh, you might as well just
fine.
put that back down.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll refund you.
Yeah, exactly. No problem. Okay, this is my last question for you, and it's a question that I ask all my guests when they come on the show, and it is: how can you create a little bit more happiness in your day every day, starting today?
Okay, so this is like, I think honestly, this is like the concept of everything that I've been talking about at the core of it, because it is about feeling good. It is about being happy. It is about feeling like nourished in your life all the time, and I think every single day, like creating more of that is like finding at least one thing to just really appreciate in your life. Right. And again, so freaking simple, but it works. And I don't know why, like, I know I've got a billion stories. I'm a chatty Kathy, but I mean, today I'm like really chatty. But like a story that's coming to mind, and this is so silly, but I remember when I first, so I was maybe a year into my relationship with my husband. We've been together for 10 years now. And well, nearly. And we were staying with his family, and he's kind of like, it like kind of annoys him sometimes, but like a lot of his family, they still kind of see him as like the little kid, they're always like, oh, Nick, like, what are you doing? Whatever. And they kind of like poke fun at a lot of his ideas, even though he's friggin' brilliant. And I don't know if it's because I was also just like meeting his family for the first time and like we were staying with them for a little bit.
Yeah.
I kind of started doing that too. And I started getting like annoyed at things he would say. And I just noticed myself being really annoyed at him for some reason. Like I was just like, I'm getting so annoyed. And so what I did is, without telling him, I decided that in my journal I was going to write down every single day something he did that I loved. Because at this point I was like so primed to look for things that annoyed me. I was just seeing things that he did that were annoying me. And I wrote down every single day just like one thing that I was I appreciated about him, or I loved that he did, or that I loved about his personality. And literally within like, probably, I did it for a full month, but probably within the first 3 days, I was just like already just like back smitten head over heels, like in love with him. And it was fine, but it was just such a great example of like how when we shift our perspective of our life, like we can feel completely different. And that's what I try to do every single day, is I try to think of like, what am I proud of myself for today? Sometimes I'm proud of the fact that I just honored myself and I let myself rest, and that I had watched Netflix without feeling guilty. Sometimes I'm proud of the fact that I signed a new client, or, this and that. Like there doesn't need to be a standard for it, but it's like an appreciation for ourselves and what's happening in our life, I think is incredibly important to feel that happiness.
Oh, I love that so much. And I think it's so important, like to being able to do like both things, like you said, you know what I mean? Like being appreciative and excited for the client that you signed, but equally as appreciative for the time that you spent sort of relaxing and, enjoying your life and watching the show without feeling guilty. Because I think so many people think they have to be go, go, go all the time, always doing more, always, creating this next thing. But sometimes when you hustle that hard all the time, and you don't let yourself enjoy anything that you're doing, it's kind of like, what's the point? You know what I mean? Aren't you doing it to have fun? Well, I think that not everybody is always, but
But that's like, we didn't even touch on that part of my story, but that was like a big thing, is like in those like 5 years of my struggling entrepreneur, it was like everything I thought that I needed to do was to work harder, to push more, to get up earlier, to stay up later.
Yeah.
And when I like build my business now, like I like, sometimes I joke and I say like old me would punch current me in the face sometimes for the advice that I give, because it's like what I wished was true, but I didn't see was true back then, and but I really do work less now. But it's also because I have an understanding that for me, my work isn't just like a separate thing that I do. It's an expression of who I am. So when I'm in nourishment and honor of myself, when I feel like having fun, I have fun. When I feel like watching Netflix, I watch Netflix. When I feel like spending the day with my husband, I do that. When I feel like being creative and launching a new program and doing the things, like, I do that. And it's all what makes it successful, right? Like, and it's what makes you feel successful.
I love that. Especially your business is such a true extension of who you are. And it's not like you're going to your job Monday to Friday. Okay, from 8 to 4, I got to do this. You know what I mean? It's like, it's Saturday at 1 p.m. and I feel like doing X, Y, and Z, you know what I mean? And knowing that it's okay to do that. And like, you can do all of those things. And that's what makes you happy. And that's what makes you, you know, feel aligned and fulfilled in that moment. So that's really, really important. I love it. Yeah. Thanks. Where can our listeners find you? Because I know they'll want to learn more.
So Instagram's probably my favorite hangout. I love Instagram stories and all the things, and I'm at Viola Hug there. And while you're using the at Viola Hug, violahug.com, my website is I can't say that my website's super current because I'm not like a huge, like, I don't believe you need a website to be super successful or anything. I just have one. And it does have my, it does have my offers on it. Most current offers will always be posted on social media and stuff like that. But specifically, if you want to know more about like my one-on-one coaching or anything like that, it's on there. And then my other favorite hangout is my Facebook group, which is Abundant Babes, a home for the visionary. So that's kind of like the group where we can just kind of hang and be abundant and talk about growth and all our crazy dreams and all those lovely things. So I love hanging out there as well. So those would be the main places.
That's awesome. I will put those in the show notes as well, so everybody can click and just get connected with you ASAP. That's amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. And thank you so much for your time. This was so fun.
Yay, I'm so happy. Thank you so much for having me, and to all of the listeners, thank you so much for being here as well. It's been great connecting.
I know, right? It's been so fun. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to today's episode on the Happiness Happens podcast. You have to make sure to go back, start from the beginning, and re-listen to it all over again, because I know that there are so many things in this episode that are going to change your perspective, change your life, and change the way you live it every single day. Until then, remember that happiness happens when you are least expecting it.
Thanks so much for being here today. I hope these words have brought you inspiration, insight, and a bit more happiness. Please leave a comment or a review if this episode resonates with you. I would be so grateful. Until next time, remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it.